Hey guys, so this is the Unit 9 Day 9 notes, and it's the last set of notes for Unit 9 before you have your test. So this set of notes is talking about graphing a square root function. So in the last one, we just found the domain, and now we're going to actually graph the function. So the pattern, there is a pattern that you follow when you're graphing a square root function. And since the pattern for the square root of x is the inverse of x squared, then the pattern just reverses itself. So you'll see, based on this picture, that starting from 0, 0, the origin, I went right one, up one. So right one, up one to plot my first point. And then again, starting back from the origin, I ended up going right 4, up 2. And starting back at the origin for that last point, I went right 9 and up 3. And if you think about that, that makes sense because what are you doing with each of those numbers? You are square rooting each of those numbers and then going that many up. So the square root of 1 is 1, so you go up 1. The square root of 4 is 2, so you go up 2. The square root of 9 is 3, so you go up 3. And that's where that pattern comes from when you're going to plot and graph the square root function. Now, when you're graphing the square root function, there's another thing that you have to remember when it comes to graphing, and that's when you have transformations, what's called transformations. So you got to remember what each of these numbers mean when you see them in a square root function, okay? So in this case, I'm going to highlight what each of them are. So A, that first number that is out front of the square root, is what changes the pattern or steepness of the function. So whenever we have a number out front of the square root, we're going to change our pattern, and our pattern is going to look something like go right 1 and up 1 times whatever A is, and go right 4 and up 2 times whatever A is, and go right 9 and up 3 times whatever A is. So if you have a number out front, your pattern changes, and it changes by just multiplying that A or that number times the 1, 2, and 3 to change your pattern. Okay? The next one that we have in here is the H. And remember, in transformations, that H on the inside of the square root tells you the horizontal transformation. It tells you whether you're going to move right and left. And here's an important piece of information as well right here. Whenever you're talking about moving right and left, it's always the opposite. So if it's minus, then you're going to move to the right. If it's plus, you're going to move to the left, which is opposite thinking. And then the last one that you need to know about or remind you about is the K on the outside here, and the K represents the vertical transformation. So it tells you whether you're going to go up or down. All right, so those are your reminders. Now let's look at a couple of the examples. Okay, so we have the reminders from the last page, but now we're going to look at some of the examples to figure out where we are going to start our graph of a square root function and where our pattern is going to go. Okay, so again, remember that you want to look at the transformations that are happening. So in this first example, I have a -2 on the inside of my square root, and that tells me that I'm going to, opposite thinking, move right 2. Okay, so that tells me when I go to plot my graph, I'm going to start at +2. Okay. Then this number on the outside here, this +4 on the outside, remember, tells us whether we move up or down. And since it's +4, that tells you I'm going to move up 4. So that means from the origin, I'm going to plot my first point at 2, 4. And that's where I'm going to start my graph. So you're going to start at 2, 4, and that's where you start your square root graph, and you do your pattern. So remember what the pattern is. The pattern is right 1, up 1, right 2, right 4, up 3, up 2, sorry, and then right 9 and up 3. okay? So we just follow the regular pattern because notice that there is no A in this one. So I'm going to go starting from that dot that I just plotted, I'm going to go right one, up one, and I'm going to plot a point. And then starting from that dot, I'm going to go right 1, 2, 3, 4, and up 2, and I'm going to plot that point. And then again, starting back from my starting point, I'm going to go right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and up 1, 2, 3, and plot that point. And then you can connect your graph to look like a square root function. Okay? So let's try it again because I know that that was a lot of different things at once. So again, looking at our picture of the square root function, or looking at our function, we have this +1 on the inside. Remember, opposite thinking. Since it's a +1, that tells us we are going to move left 1, which means my first starting point is -1 because I moved left from the origin, from the middle. And then there is a -3 on the outside. So remember that tells us whether we're going up or down. So since it's -3, that's telling us we're going to go down 3, which means our next starting point is going to be -3 because I went down. So now I'm going to plot that on my graph. -1, -3 is right here. This is our starting point of our square root function. Since there is no A, we follow that same pattern. So follow the regular pattern, okay? Right 1, up 1. Right 4 from that point, 1, 2, 3, 4, and up 2 from that point. Right 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and up 1, 2, 3 from that point. And make your picture of a square root function, okay? Now it's starting to get a little bit more advanced because it now has an A in the front. So remember that changes the pattern of your graph. So for this next example, still looking on the inside, there is nothing on the inside for moving left or right. So that tells me my starting point is going to be at 0 since I didn't move left or right. But there is a +1 on the outside, which tells us that I'm going to move up 1. So therefore, my starting point is going to be at 0, 1 when I go to graph it. So I'm going to plot a point right at 0, 1, and that's my starting point for my square root function. Now, in this case, I'll use yellow. The 2 is your A, so your A is now 2. So remember, your pattern is now going to change because you're going to multiply that 2 by the 1, the 2, and the 3. So we have 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4, and 3 times 2 is 6. So when we go to plot it, watch what happens. I start at my starting point and I go right 1, but now I go up 2, and I plot it. And then I go right 1, 2, 3, 4, and I go up 4 now because it changed 1, 2, 3, 4, and I plot it. And then I go right 9, so the 1, 4, and 9 never change, but the other numbers do. So I go right 9, and now I go up 6 instead of 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I plot it. And then I make my square root function graph. Okay? You will not see an example like this last one in ALEKS because I took this particular topic out, so you don't have to worry about that example. I will not show you how to do that. All right, so it is a little bit tricky. You have to remember a lot of things in order to be able to do this. Please let me know if you have any questions on it and send me an email. All right, good luck.